Yeah, I was looking at a lot of that on some of your other videos. Like y'all went deep. Like some of them videos, y'all went deep with horrors and all that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. See, and let me say this, like to me, I'm learning about this. I really don't know much about the conscious community, about Kemet, but I do study history, and I study like Christian history and other stuff. I'm just a big student of history, but this is one area that I'm learning. Yeah. So it's like along the way, like you said, like being Latino, like there was also some prejudices that you faced. Could you like tell the folks about that?
Well, yeah. So I'm from Miami, and Miami is very culturally diverse. There are a lot of people that come in to the country through here or wind up settling here
Okay.
from different nations, right? So um, just like I said before, like when people think of Cuban, they have this image of a person who looks fairly European, light colored hair or whatever, and that's what a Cuban is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But my family does not fit that mold, right? So growing up, I had a Latina last name, right? And so
Mhm.
I spent half of my childhood in a predominantly African American area, and then the other half in a predominantly Latino area. And when with the Latinos, to them, I'm Black, right? So they're
Yeah.
still, even though they speak Spanish, right? And for some reason, we kind of classify people based on whatever we've been exposed to. I guess it's natural. But so when we think of, for example, white, we don't classify Latino with white, but they white though. They be white. So they still have a lot of the, just like you said, they had slavery in the different islands. So they had racism in the different islands as well. So when I'm with that population, they see me as an outsider. They see me as a Black person. But then when I'm with Black people, they know my last name is Spanish, right? And then my hair texture is a little different. I speak Spanish fluently. So then, well, she's Latino. She ain't one of us, right?
Wow.
So there was this duality of like, it's not a duality because it's almost like I was excluded from both. But I didn't really, I don't care. Like I am who I am. I've always had that, but I've always had that because of my mother and the way that she raised us, of just being like Afrocentric and being rooted in our identities. That didn't really bother me, but I think it was for the most part ignorance on both sides. Like even recently, I taught high school a few years ago, and I was talking to my high school students about what it is to be Black, and they did not understand that Jamaicans, Haitians, people from different islands, they may call it by different titles, but if you want to be technical, they're all African American because they live in the Americas, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's just something that we're not really taught. We're taught to see people as other instead of being inclusive and see them as part of ourselves.
True indeed. That's amazing. It's like you couldn't win. Wherever you went, it's like you couldn't win.
Right.
Wow. Because when you had mentioned that on the podcast, that really surprised me. So that's why I made sure I wanted to really touch on that, because you don't really think much of that, like prejudice in the Latino community, but it happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just had a conversation with a friend not too long ago about this very thing, about so they know another person who's Puerto Rican. And because this is the Puerto Rican that they know, I guess that person, what they say kind of colors what they think of everybody else that's Puerto Rican. And that particular person just feels like if you're dark skinned, you're not 100% Puerto Rican. What does that even mean? Like, just like here in the United States, you know how we have the conversation about like Native Americans, right? And it's like nobody's really from here but them. Well, that's true in the islands as well. Like they had their Native American indigenous population. They were colonized by Europeans and slavery was there. They had all three of those elements, just like we have here. So you can't say, well, you're more Puerto Rican than a dark skinned Puerto, because y'all came around the same time. Like, if you're Puerto Rican, they're Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? So I just think it's interesting. Yeah.
That, because that's something that really do interest me, like that whole area of like indigenous people, and then the whole, what is it called, like the European colonization, because I study that from, even the Spanish colonization, not in a like nefarious way do I study it, but I like to know history,
Right.
because if you understand like the root of something, you can kind of trace it. Like, you may not notice about me, but like with Christian hip hop, because I cover a lot of music issues as well. And I seen you did too with Beyonce. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I cover a lot of like music issues, but I noticed like in Christian hip hop, like we started off with like cross movement, it was Jesus all the way. But if you listen to it now, it's not that big of a difference like from the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not saying that those are bad guys, because I know some of them and I love them, but most of them are real young, like 18 and 19. So they don't really know when the shift happened.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think that happens with every generation and every new thing that we do, right? As a
Yeah.
culture, like we start off very strong. Even I feel like that's an example of what happens a lot of times in the Christian walk for individual, right? So you may start off, you want to tell everybody about Jesus, you know, all your friends, everybody got to know because you feel this fire and you want to share it. But then over time, if that fire is not continuously fed, it kind of wanes off and you wind up looking like the world and talking like the world because you kind of revert back to that. So I think that could be, I'm not saying that that's what's happened, that they've left Jesus. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it could be. it could be.
In some cases it is, and in some cases it's not. But you know what I noticed? Whenever you're dealing with money, power, prestige, you tend to kind of find the same stuff everywhere, whether it be a big time ministry, whether it be a big time Christian record label, whether it be a human being. You could trace it all to the same thing. Whenever you're dealing with long, like time, money, prestige, power, like the same things are there. So if people know history, you know what to watch out for.
Right. And it's that, you know, something else too, that now that you mentioned that, I think in many ways, power, attention, even, right? Fame, and money being associated with the work of the gospel is a conflict of interest, because in many ways, you're trying to satisfy an audience, right? Like you want to present the gospel, but you want to present it in a way that will also make people want to hear it because you have a product to sell. And so sometimes the primary interest can be a little like hazy, because your primary interest should be to just preach the gospel and they're just gonna have to take it how you give it, of course, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. But then on the other hand, if your primary interest is to make money off of this product, then you're going to have to tailor it to the appetite of, you know, the intended audience.
And that's what's been happening. It's been numerous conversations about that, because behind the scenes, they look at streams, they look at album sales. Those are the things that all of them look at. And I know we didn't segue into this, but for the up and coming, you know, Christian rapper or singer or musician that's 19 years old, they probably won't look at it this way. They just look at it, ooh, my dream's coming true. But they don't see behind the scenes. Manager got to get paid. The bus driver got to get paid. The bus need gas. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, the reason why your initial statement about your conversion was so interesting is because I was having this conversation not too long ago, thinking about whether or not people are converted off the strength of listening to music. Like, so that's why I was like, okay, when you said that initially about Lecrae, and how that helped you. So yeah.
Oh, I want to hear about that. Like, what's your thoughts on that? On people being converted off of the strength of music?
So I guess my initial question, I don't know if I had formulated a strong hold of an opinion yet, but my initial question was kind of like, are people who are not interested already in the gospel listening to things like Christian hip hop and being converted? Because if we're saying that it's a tool for evangelism, right, then that means we're having to reach people who are not already in the church. And my question was like, are people who are not in the church listening to people like Lecrae? You know what I mean? But after I kind of had like a survey with different people or whatever, asking the same question. And I think, you know, a lot of people do. And I don't know if it's a lot, but I've definitely seen that it's not absent, like it's not, you know, non-existent. People actually do somehow, one way or another, listen to this music and wind up feeling that conviction and being converted. So,
you know.